Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We will start straight off with agenda item number 51, which is apologies. Have we had any apologies? No apologies. So we'll move on next to number 52, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anyone have any comments or changes that they wanted to raise about that? So should we go to approval? So all in favour of approving the minutes? Any against? Okay, so the minutes are approved. Thank you. And so next agenda item, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for this meeting? Nope. Okay, great. Moving on to the next agenda item, public question time.
No public questions.
No public questions, thank you. And then on to member question time.
No member questions.
No member questions. So we'll move on to item 56, which is the Youth Council update. So, hi, Joe. Thank you.
Hi, that's myself and my colleague Sarah. So obviously we've, sorry, I shall introduce myself. I'm Jo Caddick. I am Head of Programme Implementation within Children's Services, and here with my colleague Sarah Desson. We have provided an update around the work of the Woking Youth Council over the last 18 months. Obviously the report is within the agenda pack. We had hoped that for some Youth Council members to be able to have joined this evening to provide an update. Unfortunately, those that showed an interest weren't available at this particular date. So actually, Sarah, my colleague, has worked with a couple of the young people to provide voice notes, and so has a presentation, a few slides to share that actually has captured the voice of the young people, so they can share what they've actually been doing over the last 12 months. So I'll hand over to Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. Yes, just a few slides from our young people that I'll share now. And as Jo said, it will have some people talking as well. So if you can't hear what's being said, just let me know. We're just starting, we've got some pictures here. This is from our last youth politics event. And this is here, this is our new youth MP and then also our deputy youth MP here.
What we do. At Wokingham Youth Council, we aim to make the voices of young people heard and improve the community of Wokingham's residents. We meet once a month in the council offices and cover a variety of topics, including providing feedback to organisations on strategies involving young people, welcoming guest speakers, debating current affairs and planning the youth politics event for the borough. Over the past year of meetings, we've covered given feedback to the community vision work, given feedback on the young people's housing strategy, given feedback on the SEN strategy, given feedback on the public health strategy, given feedback and helped design the children's and young people partnership priorities and plan on a page, given feedback on the drugs, alcohol, tobacco and vaping strategy, given feedback on the air quality action plan, heard a presentation about the anti-racism work within the schools, and completed the Youth Future Focus survey.
And then also in addition to that, the young people also then had a focus group as well for the Youth Future Focus consultation work we did.
One member of the Youth Council sits on the Community Vision Steering Group to represent the voices of young people. Some of our members sat on a youth panel as part of the interview process for the current Director of Children's Services and the Service Director for Education and SEND. Our member for Youth Parliament attended the annual House of Commons sitting in February. Some members attended the SEND Preparing for Adulthood event to promote the Youth Council and recruit new members. We held our second annual youth politics event, with our third one taking place on the 27th of March. Some of our members presented to Woodley Town Council about the work of the Youth Council, and some other members attended a Woodley Town Council meeting to discuss youth services in the area and what they would like to see more of.
And then also just to add on to the end again, so some of our members who are from Addington School are helping work with Wokingham Council SEND team, and they're helping to create a video about sixth form life at Addington School for those who might be interested in going there in the future as well.
The Wokingham Youth Charter was created by the previous Youth MP with support from the Youth Council, and it details proposals collated from the ideas gathered through members, as well as a student survey and focus groups. The 8 proposals were presented at a full council meeting to all 54 Wokingham Borough councillors. A follow-up meeting was then held to talk about putting some of the priorities into action. The Wokingham Youth Offer will address priorities 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6, and the Youth Council will be involved in the agreed actions and support the development of the priorities. We are working to make sure that Wokingham Youth Council is owned and led by the members, with young people designing and agreeing future agendas and projects. We are in the process of choosing a set of long-term campaign strategies. Our possible initiatives include a focus on knife crime prevention, including in creating social spaces for young people and creating more community events. This includes looking into potential funding streams to support our campaigns and causes. Our next event is the Youth Politics Night in March, where we'll be inviting students from across the borough to pitch questions to a panel of MPs and councillors.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So obviously we're happy to take any questions, or we're happy to take any questions or comments back to obviously the Youth Council members.
Thank you very much, and thank you for including the voices of the Youth Council members in that. I think that's a really nice touch to have that as well. So are there any questions that people wanted to raise on that at all? Yeah, Jane first.
Yeah, a couple of observations, really, more than questions. First, I thought it was great to read that the Youth Council were involved in staff recruitment. I think it's a real clear signal that their voice matters, as it should. I'd personally, if I can, I don't know how I would get involved, but I'm quite interested in the knife crime piece of work. If I could engage with them on that, that would be great. And then I think the youth politics event sounds amazing. How are we proactively marketing it to get as many young people to it as we can? Because it's a quite rare opportunity for them to ask questions of our MPs and councillors.
Sarah, shall I hand over to you? You can talk about that.
Yeah, so the event where we basically spread the word through the Youth Council and then also sent it out to all schools as well. We included it in the kind of education newsletter as well. And what we did is had a little poster as well. We tried to encourage schools to either print them off or show them in form time that had a little QR code that they could then register to the event. And then I then emailed all of the people who had registered the event to then email to see if they had any questions then for the MPs that are going to be submitted beforehand.
So how many people, how many people are you expecting, do you think?
Well, so far we do have the whole council chamber booked, so all 54 seats have been booked, and there was a request to even have more, but obviously it's limited capacity. So hoping all of them turn up and it can, be a really, really great event.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on that? I just had a couple of things, small things, and thank you for those. One of the things was it was great to see the engagement with that they'd been part of the community vision and things like that. And I was just wondering, with all these things that have been part of, are there any things which, many things which you think the council have sort of taken directly on board as a result of their suggestions and things like that? Are there any things that we can sort of pinpoint to actually that they've changed something with the way that the council does things?
I know obviously we've had one young person, Andrew, who's been part of all of the steering groups for the community vision. And Sarah, I know that you've gone along to some of the events with him, and it was very much noted that it was really great to have the voice of young people. I don't know if you've got an example, Sarah.
In terms, well, obviously they then kind of, what we're talking about, the kind of community vision work.
Yes, or any others.
I think our young people on the Youth Council members, they attended one of the community vision workshops, I think, that they held as well, to kind of feed into the I think it was priorities that they were kind of focusing on in that workshop. I mean, obviously they then feed into the strategies and action plans that get brought here, and then they will make suggestions and stuff like that. Obviously, like you said, with the recruitment as well of some staff members, I think what our young people would really like to do is we kind of mentioned they would like to start campaigns. So it's something that they can completely take ownership of, basically, and that's their work. That's stuff that they can work towards. I'm just trying to think of other examples that we've got. I think so. I guess kind of working with Woodley Town Council as well was another big thing, because they've I think they had some funding available basically for young people in that area, and they really wanted to know how young people would like that money to be spent for kind of activities for them. So some of our young people went along to one of their meetings to have a say in to, I guess, directly influence that as well.
It might be worth saying about the youth focus survey as well. We're really keen to, so for all those young people that have been involved, which includes the Youth Council, but obviously a much wider, to ensure that we are sharing back with those young people in terms of, you said we're calling it. So obviously in terms of what the young people have actually fed back, so we can actually go back to those young people and be quite clear around what actions are actually taking place because of the things that they shared with us. So we are making sure that happens later on this year.
Great, thank you. Yeah, sorry, do you want to come in with that, Emma?
Sorry, just to add in terms of the youth focus survey, so over 2,000 young people between the ages of 11 and 18 fed back to us in that survey, and that is going to come to, we have that table to come back to a future children's overview and scrutiny, to give members the opportunity to review what young people have said and what they would like to change, what they like about the borough, but also what they would like to see changed, and would improve their lives. So that's going to come back here.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, because that was one of my other questions, but I think that's coming. Is it its next meeting or one of them, isn't it? I think the update of that, isn't it?
I think
yeah. I was just checking there because I think is that the Wokingham Youth Office survey? Is that the one that? Yes. Yeah. Just checking that they've all got slightly similar names, but But yeah, that's really positive to hear. Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone else about that? So thank you for all the work with that with the Youth Council. I was just going to ask as well, maybe we can add it as a recommendation on this item. I think it's really great, the number of events and things like that, and how they're being marketed. And I wonder whether some of these events could be circulated around the committee and things like that, whether it's things that we could attend and possibly observe. I'm thinking particularly things like the Youth Council events, or even just Youth Council meetings, if that is available for people to observe, because I think it would be nice to just see what events are going, and if we can make it along to things, it'd be great to see if you think that would be possible.
Yes. Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much for all of that, and good luck with the event on next Thursday. I'm sorry I won't be able to make it to that one, but it sounds like there's a great uptake with that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item moving on to is the education and send update. So yes, I'll hand. Who's going first?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we will do a double act between Julian and I. I will let Julian to start by updating school side, school aspect on education information. Julian, and then I will follow up by giving a big picture of education update. Thank you.
Thanks, Ming. Thank you. So you have the report in front of you, just to draw attention really to the changes upcoming and proposed in respect of Ofsted inspections. And I really would commend to colleagues to engage in the consultation. The link to that consultation is in the report. Some wide-ranging changes being proposed to the inspection process that will take place and come into effect from next November. And just keen to stress that it will be from November, so after the half-term break in the autumn term. I know there's been a lot of discussion around changes from autumn 2025, but just to clarify, that is from November 2025. Those changes relate to the construction of a report card instead of having just a written report. The written report will focus on these particular areas, a number of evaluation areas which are listed in tonight's report, and then would be judged against a 5-point scale. We currently have a 4-point scale. And the change of words from outstanding through to inadequate then become exemplary, strong, secure, attention needed and causing concern. And just to highlight for you that one of the key things that HMI are saying in respect of this change is that the assumption at the start of an inspection would be that the school is secure. So starting from a basis of positivity and giving a school an opportunity to celebrate success. So quite a shift and change in terms of the perspective with which Ofsted inspections will take place. And a whole range of toolkits and information being shared transparently with the profession and nationally through the Ofsted Academy. So making all the training materials and judgment information available to the profession to be able to use. Pilots are currently underway, and when I was speaking with HMI last week, she was talking through how some of the pilots are already beginning to have an impact on changes and nuance, how things might be going forward. That consultation is open until the end of April, so the 28th of April. If you are able to engage in that, I would certainly commend it to you. In terms of inspections that have happened since we last met, you can see that those inspections listed there. And what you're beginning to see now is the change in the reporting process that we've talked about a couple of times now that have come in since last September. So no longer an overall effectiveness grade. So I'm no longer reporting to you that school X is good or outstanding, but you can see the list of grades for each of the schools there where it was a graded inspection. And then when it was a Section 8 inspection, which does not give a formal grade, you can see the sentences that are being used as the summary statement about the school, about taking effective action. And then you have the usual information around the statutory inspection of Anglican and Methodist schools and the work that the team is undertaking. So I'll pause there, Chair, for any questions that colleagues might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments that anyone wants to make on that part section? Yes, Chris.
So on the inspections that we've got there, they've replaced the one word with several words, but the several words are all the same. Is that just a freak of statistics, or is there a general pattern to the fact that, you know, it just happens to be the three that we've got in front of us are all the same word?
Yes, it is that, in terms of that's the way that those inspections have actually fallen out in those particular gradings. It's also due to the fact that where they've removed the overall effectiveness grade, they haven't actually changed the inspection framework currently. So we're still operating under the same framework. So those schools that were inspected there, you can see that in each of those evaluation areas, the judgments that they received, whereas previously I would have just been giving you one headline grade.
Questions? Yeah, Moses.
I don't know whether the council can answer this. I'm just wondering, the assumption that the vast majority of schools are secure, what's the basis? I would have thought if you were making an assumption, you would be a bit more pessimistic rather than assuming that schools are secure when some could be causing concern.
So at the moment, nationally, there are only 2% of schools who sit in the schools in causing concern category, and 98% of schools sit outside of that. The way in which these are the proposed changes from the autumn this year, the way in which the inspection toolkit is being rewritten is to place in that secure judgment all of the current statutory requirements and policies and procedures that schools have to adhere to will be sitting inside the framework in the secure judgment. So it will be expected that schools are meeting those base requirements. So that's why the assumption will be that all schools are starting from a secure position, and inspection will start by looking to work through and assure themselves that those schools are secure in meeting those requirements. Where they are not assured, then they would kind of work their way lower in the grading process against specific areas. And where they are assured, then they will start looking further up the scale to see whether there's enhanced provision or indeed exemplary provision.
Yeah, I'm looking at another question, looking at Bohorn Secondary School as an example. As a parent, if I wanted to make a decision, I would want to know a firm categorization of a school. So when I see a report that says inspection suggests that the school's work may have improved significantly across all areas since the previous inspection. School was previously judged good. That doesn't tell me whether it's still good or it's now outstanding.
So two separate pieces of information here. The process that I was just explaining are in the proposals for the autumn term. The inspection judgment that you're looking there is under the current framework. And that is because that was a Section 8 inspection, which cannot give you a judgment about the school. It's a monitoring visit, which is why I've just put the little asterisk in the report there that says the school was previously judged to be good. And what a monitoring visit, also known under the framework as a Section 8 inspection, does is to review whether the school continues to meet that standard. Does that help explain for you?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Okay.
I just wanted to say, coming back about the secure comment, having been through several Ofsted inspections with a good and an outstanding school, I think it's great to see this mindset shift, and staff can be thinking about the good and the great that goes on in schools, not the, oh my God, Ofsted are coming in and they're coming to catch us out. So I see it as a real positive that we're moving towards assuming that most schools, as we would expect, are secure, and then they can prove they're better than secure, and then it's for Ofsted to find out if they're not. I like that mindset shift.
Thank you for those. Yeah, I haven't got any questions, but it just looks very positive, I think, with Bohunt's recent inspection. So hopefully that will go even further next time. So thank you for that. So if we move on to the second part of the report with Ming, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The second part is really, I think, it's about our outcome, the broader education theme outcome. I make assumption that most committee members have read the report, so I wouldn't read line by line of what's been presented to you. Just like let you know our 1A outcome about EHCP plan as part of national trend. The EHCP still continue to increase, although annual percentage, we are still lower than the national average. And we have put, as you know, a range of measures, and with some more focus recently on 4-5 work streams. to make sure children, young people need EHCP plan, get the right one. The one can be supported in other ways, or without diagnosis, they are also getting support. That's a journey we already see some green shoot, but as a trend is still going up. In terms of timeliness, one of important measurement is 20 weeks assessment to be completed. In the quarter three, we have a drop in timeliness, now drop below national average of 50%. There are a couple of reasons for that. Number one reason is that the same team, as member may be aware of, in the past years have experienced a great movement of staffing. The market has been challenged. Some staff member, they do decide to move around local authority. They work for a period of time in working on, and then they move out or other way around. So at in that particular quarter, we only have 3 full-time caseworker when we're supposed to have 7. And then we have no senior caseworker when we're supposed to have 2. As you can imagine, that greatly affects the smooth running of the assessment. But during that same period, we have gained great support from corporate center to enhance the same thing, but it takes time to recruit people. So we do have the period of time we are short of staff while full range of things, case working challenge need to be overcome. But good news I can share with you, we now have successfully recruit 9 people out of 10 full team. And also senior manager have been recruited to the team as well. They all joined us in the end of January and the beginning of February, and they are still staying with us. We have previously overcome the drop in timeliness, but by working on the focus area, we have success to improve that timeliness. This is important to us. So we are working on this. We are going to have a full staff in, and we're going to have weekly monitoring of the timeliness. So we have confidence that this will improve. And tribunal case, quarter 3 always tricky. I would say that normally have a higher number. If you look at the quarter 3, most recent quarter 3 compared to previous quarter 3, there's always a little bit increase, but roughly it's the same trend as previous year that we follow. But again, let's link to the staffing issue. We now putting a more mitigating sort of measure and the staffing level. We will make sure, I think, the tribunal cases will be stabilized. I think at the moment we're kind of achieving that, but we want to further reduce if possible. And also another thing we find it really useful through the tribunal cases. We can learn a lot. We can see what kind of cases people come to tribunal. We have found that I'm sure members also know that we have increased the number of requests for EHCP, part of national trend. We have put in a great effort to, as I said earlier, to make sure the one need EHCP to get it timely, and also we try to other way to make sure we have upstream measure to intervene early. So inevitably, when we do this, we have more parents under the old system. They will get the EHCP assessment. Now we start to say no to more parents. So as you can imagine, most case go to tribunal is because we say no to the request for EHCP. Let's move on to next block, our KPI, children missing education. I'd like to share good news with you. In Q3, you compare to previous Q3, we nearly half, or we more than
Sorry,
half.
could we just, before we move on to that bit, can we just have a couple of questions on the first dashboard? Is that all right? And then we can move on to that. Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you want to, yeah, Charles first, yeah.
Thank you. Forgive me if I'm not quite clear on how this tribunal system works. You've got a measure here of the amount of cases. Is that a figure what percentage of that are the parents finding in favour of? Is it a case that 28 go to tribunal and 28 come back saying Woking must pay for the care, or is it a case that 28 go to tribunal and then a certain percentage of those there's a decision in favour of the parents, or there's a decision in favour of the authority?
Yeah, I don't have exactly percentage, but some cases are still ongoing, while the other have completed. But I can share with you, we are looking at the past years, and most cases, majority of cases in parents' favour. Again, that's a national trend.
Just wanted to come back on that very briefly, if I can. You said most cases find in favour of the parent, understood, but are we talking about a figure, just ballpark, which is more like 60% or is more like 90%?
I would say that it's between 80% to 90%. I'll come back to you with the exact figure. I think between 80 to 90%.
There is a way in which they count the outcomes. So there are usually within a case, there are a number of different points in terms of findings within a tribunal. And it is the case that even if not all points are found in favour of the parent, that still counts as being found in its entirety against the local authority. So, so in terms of the way in which the data is presented, so you might have 9 points and only one of those is found in favour of the parent, but that would still count on that broader in terms of the tribunal finding, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you.
So children with EHCP rates in Wokingham is much higher than the national picture.
In past year, we are 4.2%, national 4.8%.
So are we moving to be in line with the national?
Yeah, we're slightly lower than national average.
Oh, we are now?
Let's not quarter by quarter, if the whole year you look at the
cool.
past 12 months.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We are better than national, I don't know, better, it's lower than national average.
Right, lovely, thanks.
Thank you. I just wanted to just ask something sort of related to that, just on the staffing you mentioned, because from the data there, it looks like it went through quite a difficult patch there. So from what you're saying, have we now recruited most of the people we need, and is there further recruitment to do in this area?
Yeah. Yes, Chair. We believe so. We have a few strategies put in place when we make sure we will recruit most people who stay on. Number one, we want to recruit people as locally as possible by better advertising campaign. And also we campaign in a way to let people know more about Wokingham. What's the benefit of working for Wokingham? Also, we do pay attention to people who keep moving around local authority a lot. So by learning from what we have gathered from the feedback of the previous employee who may leave us for one reason or another, we target the right people. And also we're building the professional development program. link up with our social care peers and our children's service or professional development program. So we want to make sure they are supported in doing their job. Also, we're building clinical supervision when individual caseworker is a challenging job, it's a challenging job. When they have difficulty, they have someone to talk to, they have manager support there. By doing that, as I said, I can report back this first time in past 3 months, we haven't had anyone actually leave in the service. In the past, nearly every month you have someone that they want to leave service.
Thank you. Yeah, Emma, did you want to come in with that?
Just wanted to add that I think historically it's a team that's been staffed by locums, which has contributed to frequent turnover and some of the communication challenges that parents and carers have fed back in relation to the service. So part of the focus of, as Ming has said, has been really investing in that team and the support that they need in order to deliver the support that we need them to for children and families. So it's really positive that there is now almost 95% fully permanent staff. That gives us an opportunity to develop that team ethos, that culture, training and development. But it is notable that there isn't a national recognised accreditation for SEN casework, and that's something that I think, you know, looking to develop in-house for so that it really does, you know, it's a job that people can sustain and feel that they are really contributing to better improved outcomes for children, and I think that probably historically hasn't, this is a national issue, but I think historically hasn't felt the case, which has led to high levels of turnover.
Thank you. And sort of leading on from that, I was wondering, I mean, I know it's been flagged that that's had a bit of an impact on the timeliness of the EHCPs issued. Do we know that what the impact on that kind of staff turnover has had on the kind of annual reviews of EHCPs and things like that, and what impact that might have?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think the one direct impact, as you can see, that just shown the KPI is the timeliness at the delayed internal children, young people, either as individuals, obviously want to assessment to be completed on time. If not completed on time, they maybe delayed in identify the need or indeed confirm the need not there. So that's the impact on children and young people we recognize.
And sorry, going on with that, in terms of my understanding, so they're issued an EHCP, and then is it the same caseworkers which then take on some of the annual reviews, or is that done? Is that delegated?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
So then that's not part of the system when those annual reviews come through. Is that correct?
So the annual reviews are delegated to schools to conduct and work with the SEN caseworker in terms of any updates following those reviews, in terms of revisions to the plan. So we are aware that the timeliness in terms of the reissuing of any updated EHCPs has been impacted again by that turnover, but that's something that again we're monitoring.
And is that where that's maybe been is that usually down to the caseworkers, or is that down to schools, or is it? It's
a combination of both.
Combination of both. And do we have data on how annual reviews are sort of processed and things like that?
Yes, and we can bring that back to this forum.
Yeah, I was wondering whether that could be possibly something that could be added onto the dashboard or something like that, so we could see that as well. Yeah, Prue, do you want to go with that?
There's two things here which I'm interested in. I think Children's Services officers are also interested in. There's the timeliness and there's the quality. And we're doing quite a lot at the moment, which is going to hopefully improve the consistency of the original EHCP. I'm not so clear that we're going to be able to we should be able to improve the quality of the annual reviews through that process, but it's a little bit trickier because it's a bit at arm's length. But we bought a product to help us do that, and it should feed through ultimately into the school reviews, because it is trickier for schools because they're not necessarily specialists, particularly small schools that don't do it. So we have to help them with that process, but the quality matters just as much as the timeliness.
Yeah, and do the caseworkers then have a sort of role in helping quality assure what the schools are doing? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we chair, just like at, we now have for more than 1 year now, we start to building a case auditing. We chose 5-6 cases to audit, to spot any issue, any strengths in the case working. That's the multi-agency case auditing. That will include how school review the case, how school work with the children, young people, how we assess the case, how social care input again it was and what health input was. So we have learned quite a lot from that case audit as well. So this is the piece of work led by our same QA lead, which had been become more mature. I think we moved from 0 case audit to now to have a more sort of embedded case audit system to QA our same case work.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on that first dashboard? Yeah, Moses.
On the staffing issue, I don't understand how the HCP process works, but I would expect it to be structured and readily amenable to things like the AI. So how much of technology is being deployed in this process to increase efficiency?
Technology, I think it is more admin. It's not really for technology to something like that auto system that we don't use. That is it is very much relational, in person, like kind of assessment. Yeah, you refer technology as something high-end technology is not being used for ESCP assessment itself. Is very much personal, human sort of approach.
Yeah, and Emma, do you want to?
But I think that's a really helpful point, Moses, in terms of because nationally there is action to look at how technology can support both improved quality and accelerate the human input into planning and support. So that is something that we know we are connected to national developments in this area, just in terms of learning and system learning in relation to how technology can support, and indeed in relation to the quality assurance aspect. That was the tool that Prue was referring to. So that is helping us look at how we get consistency in terms of that quality, particularly in terms of how reports are written and how specific they are about children's needs, and then the matching in the support in a more consistent way in relation to that, because we do know through that audit process that we've still got some variability. But that's part of that, again, system learning and using technology to support us in that. But I think Ming is absolutely right. This is a human endeavour. These are children that we are absolutely committed to supporting and still require, where any technology is assisting us, that there is that human oversight, decision making, and there's still the relationships between the Woking Borough Council, the health team, and the education provider in terms of making sure that that plan is actioned for that child.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. I actually think AI will not take away the personalization of the EHCP planning process?
I think it's fair to say that lots of parents and carers are worried about that aspect of it, and we need to listen to those concerns as as nationally those developments go forward. And it's important that particularly any employment of use within Wokingham is done within clear ethical guidelines and standards. So, but that needs, that's all got to be developed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for answering those questions on the first dashboard. Did you want to, should we look at the second dashboard now?
Yeah. Let's quickly go through it. The second part, dashboard item 2, is about children missing education. You compare to last year's Q3. Last year we have 17, now we have 8, which is more than half children missing education. As I said before, children missing education mainly the cover young people who either the parent think they can wait until they get what they perceive as a better school or good school for their children. They would rather to wait longer, waiting for reply for no school they apply for, or they just move into area that's still going through a process to get a placement at school. We do not have any situation the children actually just been there, not applying, no action being taken. So action being taken, just need to go through the process. So it's a better picture than last year, of course, than last quarter as well. In terms of exclusion, is our very interesting. In past 2 years, since September 2022, we have an increase in suspension and exclusion. As I mentioned before, what we found recently, the exclusion actually highly concentrate, the episode highly concentrate on a few schools. Not majority, we have majority. When I work out how many schools never permanent exclude people, I can find about 85, 87 to 87. It depends on different period of time. School they have never used exclusion. So as you can imagine, it's highly concentrated on a few schools. So we do some target work with those schools. Since September, our exclusion rate and suspension rates have been gradually reduced. Now we're below the national average. There have been a spike since between 2022 kind of until last September. So it seems to be stabilized. We want to keep it that way by working in partnership with school leaders who are playing a very, very important role to try to find good alternative to suspension and exclusion. So which have seen, the effort have seen some green shoot, as you can see here. I think that's all education report, education and SEND report I have. Any question, any other further question?
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on the rest of that report? No. Thank you very much for those reports. I wonder just if particularly on that first part of it, if we could maybe make a recommendation that we include some data on the timeliness of annual reviews, and if there is there data on the kind of quality of them? I know you talked about the auditing. Is that something that might be able to be put on there as well, do we think? Yeah, thank you. If that's in agreement with everyone else, I think, yeah. Thank you very much for all of that. So we'll move on to our next item, which is policy for allocating spare seats on council school buses, an issue close to Shinfield's heart, I know. Yes, Oliver, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this basically the whole kind of genesis of this policy was around the fact that we received kind of a fair amount, decent amount of challenge last year in relation to the allocation of seats on transport, particularly from Shinfield to secondary schools in the borough. Now, the principal challenge was around the well, two elements. First of all, around the allocation process, but second of all, around around I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but effectively the mechanism by which people apply. So what we've done and what we committed to at a meeting of Shinfield Parish Council was to develop a new policy that would kind of clarify all of these things and be based on engagement with stakeholders. So getting their input in terms of kind of the new policy moving forwards. Now, the process last year was basically on a first come first served basis. So what would happen would be we would say in advance that the application window would open at on X date at X time, and then basically whoever got in there first with their emails, kind of their application forms, kind of submitting their for homeschool transport, would get the places. And that obviously, as understandably, because a lot of these services are substantially oversubscribed, that placed a lot of stress and anxiety on parents who'd be kind of waiting, kind of clicking refresh on the screen kind of thing. So there was a definite will to kind of move away from that. So the first question we asked parents, we undertook consultation between November and December last year. And the first question we asked was the preferred method of allocating seats. So we gave the options again of first come, first served. Secondly, in terms of random allocation, and third, in terms of a criteria-based system. The clear preference that came back from the feedback was for a criteria-based system. So again, moving away from first come, first served. And then the natural next question was, well, what criteria should be used? We gave an option of 7 different criteria that we could potentially implement. And the feedback from parents, they gave us, they kind of ranked their criteria, and we looked at the analysis, which can be seen in figure 1 within the report. And so in terms of how we reacted to that, so in addition to obviously going with a criteria-based system, the ranking that we've kind of applied largely aligns with the preferences that the parents expressed in their feedback. However, there are a couple of tweaks that we made. First of all, to note that we give kind of first priority to children who live within Wokingham. I think that kind of makes sense fundamentally in terms of the fact that those are the children for whom we are principally responsible. And then following that, although there was a high preference to rank distance to school, when we discussed this, it was clear that really, because that's a continuous variable, as opposed to kind of the others, which are kind of binary categorical variables, it could only really be used as the tiebreaker at the end. Otherwise, if it was ranked higher, then anything below that would effectively not be relevant, if that makes sense. So effectively, it had to be the tiebreaker at the end, as it is in school admissions processes. So so we moved that one down to the end, and then the final thing was to remove the element of relating to GCSE year groups, because it was the least preferred in any case. So that was kind of removed from the criteria ranking system. So the ranking, just to kind of reaffirm, was first of all live within Wokingham Borough. Second, unavailability of alternative public transport options. Thirdly, having a seat in a previous academic year, so ensuring that there is continuity of service for pupils, and they're not 1 year having provision and 1 year not having provision. Fourthly, those in receipt of preschool meals. So that kind of was an element that we were looking to ensure that pupils who would benefit most financially from having subsidised transport effectively, well, not subsidised necessarily, but more cost-effective transport. That's probably that way to describe it. And fifth, in terms of those who had siblings of those who already had the seat, and finally, in terms of that tiebreaker of distance to school. I think that kind of neatly kind of encapsulates the essence of the policy that's been brought forth here. Just to kind of reaffirm that we discussed this with Prue, and Prue asked that this be brought to this committee for review and for any kind of suggestions in relation to the content, or indeed if people are happy to kind of approve it, then we'll get it published and apply that to our policy and to our processes this year in terms of the allocation of seats, which will be happening in April, May time. So I'll open this up to any questions.
Thank you very much for that. It's yeah, a very detailed report, and I think it's good progress on the system before. Catherine, did you want to come in first?
Yes, I've got quite a few questions because I asked parents to give me their questions if they've got some. Some of them came up with them spontaneously. The first one is something I spotted. It's really with the layout or wording of the policy that it's number one, the live within Wokingham Borough is kind of a separate thing. I mean, it almost looks as if you're putting it first, so all children within Wokingham Borough get a seat on the bus. Do you see what I mean? It could be read like that. I mean, obviously it doesn't mean that, but it's kind of a underlying criteria.
So, I mean, the way the criteria work, obviously, is it kind of sifts the applicants. So the first funnel we need to get through to be prioritised is to live within Wokingham Borough, and then we sift all of those in relation to criterion two. And then if there's still too many for seats on the bus, then we sift in relation to criterion 3. So yes, generally it is kind of quite a wide criterion, and that in essence is obviously kind of part of the process. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it's clear on kind of a detailed reading of the policy that just because you meet the first criterion doesn't mean that you necessarily get a seat.
Yeah.
We can make that very, very explicit if that would help.
I mean, in theory, you could go through the whole process again with some children who didn't live in Wokingham Borough at the end, if you've still got seats.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It ultimately, like if there are more seats than pupils who live within Wokingham who have applied, then necessarily there will be seats available for those outside. And again, that would therefore discount criterion 1, and they would then get sifted from criterion 2 downwards. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. Right. Next one is: have the council carried out any sensitivity assessment based on the current customer base? I think it is. Yes. In other words, how many people who've been allocated a seat today may be rejected for a seat under the new policy? Have you done any testing?
Unfortunately, I mean, it's very difficult to do because the applications that we receive year on year kind of vary quite distinctly in relation to all of the criteria that have been listed. So we could do an analysis based on last year's data, but as to the reliability of that projecting what will happen this year, I would say it'd be kind of incredibly unreliable, just based on kind of previous years' experience in that respect. We could do it if that was a request of the committee, certainly. But again, no guarantees as to kind of its kind of predictive accuracy.
I mean, you have got the criterion of being on the bus already, so that's going to be a factor anyway, isn't it?
Yes, but the number of pupils who, because that kind of varies year on year in terms of the number of pupils. See, if we were to do it in a predictive sense, in relation to that criterion alone, it would kind of make a mess of all the other criteria in terms of that. So we either have to do it retrospectively or prospectively, if that makes sense. If we can't just do it in isolation prospectively for one criterion, otherwise the whole analysis becomes skewed. Like I say, I think the only real way to do it would be retrospectively, but I'm not sure of the predictive accuracy of that. And it's almost like with the admissions process. If you do an admissions process 1 year and it says, you know, last year which we do for admissions, it says, you know, within this catchment, for this school, pupils within a 2-mile radius received a school place last year, and then the next year it's kind of 1.5 miles, and all the parents who lives 1.6 miles away say, well, I only applied for that school because I thought I'd get in. we get those objections, or they get those complaints kind of every year. But at the same time, we're very kind of clear to say that, you know, historical kind of metrics aren't anything to kind of they aren't kind of necessarily accurate in terms of predicting what is in the future, because it's sort of all dictated by parental preference and who applies in a given year.
Yeah, thank you.
But I'll reiterate that if people want us to do that, we're happy to do it, as long as it's with heavily caveated with there are no guarantees around this, and we think that this effectively the actual result will vary quite substantially from this in a way that we can't predict.
Yeah, okay. I'm not. It's perfectly reasonable. The next question has actually been written in a very long-winded way, but it's basically that parents feel that it's not their fault that they're not sending their children to the nearest school because it's, they don't want to send them to Oakbank, and it's not their fault, but it's costing them £1,000 per child to put them on a bus. It's not really about the policy, really. It's more about,
Yeah. I mean, I understand that, and you're correct that it's not really about the policy. But I've had this kind of question before, specifically at Shinfield Parish Council. I understand it's a concern of parents. That unfortunately there is not an awful lot we can do about that. I mean, basically, I think probably what might be underpinning the question is, should the council be providing free transport to all people who want to go to another school in Oakbank? Well, we're not legally required to, and we certainly don't get funded to do that either. And bearing in mind the pressures that already exist in relation to the homeschool transport budget, I would suggest that we probably don't want to kind of weigh that with further pressure in that respect. What we'll say as well is obviously, that there is potentially some good news on the horizon for Oakbank. That there's obviously kind of going to be a change of leadership there in relation to its management. So I think we're all hopeful that school may be able to kind of turn the corner relatively soon, and therefore, and hopefully will become a school of choice for the local community in the not too distant future.
Yeah, we certainly hope so.
Just to add a bit on that front. So I'm hoping this is going to be the last year where we have this issue. Having been through it twice, so Ollie wasn't there the first year, which was far worse than the second year. That was funny. I understand, and we do completely understand why parents don't choose Oakbank. But we should have some news tomorrow about who will be the preferred trust. And if it is announced tomorrow, I will say something in my executive statement at council tomorrow night so that everybody knows it's happened. It will take time for parents to trust that the school is improving, but I do hope that there will be evidence over the coming year so that when people apply next November, they have more confidence that they can apply to a local school. And there is a meeting in Shinfield at the end of the month at which we will be discussing this further. And I just hope for the school's sake that things are moving up for the children and for the parents' sake as well, and for the staff. But the signs that the trust that's named on the agenda to be discussed tomorrow has been in looking at the school, helping out the school. They provided some support for them over half term with tuition and so on, extra tuition, particularly for GCSE students and so on. So they are already doing some work in the school, and the council has also been supporting the school through this period. So we are hopeful that this will be the last year where there's a real issue in Shinfield. Although the one thing we haven't said is that this policy does apply to all school buses. Will be applying if we ever get this anywhere else. When there are one or two places where it might happen, but certainly the situation in Shinfield is it is unique in the borough.
Thank you. Did you have any?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Still, there's a question about realising that it's the council's discretion as to the capacity of the school buses, and will the council continue to use as larger buses as are necessary?
Obviously, this gets assessed on an annual basis in relation to the volume of applications we get, as well as anything else. I would imagine that the capacity of buses will be similar to what it was last year, in all honesty. But again, like I can't kind of provide any guarantees in relation to that, because obviously, again, we just can't predict things year on year. But in all expectation, the capacity will be similar to what it was last year. That answers the question. Then obviously there isn't necessarily going to be a contingent of parents who aren't provided for in that respect.
And that's sort of related to another question, which is that somebody's just still worried that there will not be enough seats for fair payers, and would additional buses be put on?
Right.
I mean, I did explain to her that last year we tried to do that, but the cost was prohibitive.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you've been able to kind of factor that into the pricing this year.
I think it was so incredibly unpopular last year that that's not something we're really going to consider this year. You know, we took the proposals to Shinfield Parish Council. We offered parents, because it's, you know, it's a question. We're effectively offering fare payers on those buses a seat at below kind of what it costs. It's sort of, to a certain extent, if we don't fill those seats, then we get nothing for those vacant seats. So we fill it with eligible children first, and then any other seats we offer at a rate that's agreed, that we agree is kind of reasonable. But if we were to put on like additional buses, we'd have to offer it at cost, and we offered that last year, and no one wanted to take it up. So because it's expensive. and you know, and the alternative is that the council kind of pays for that itself, and we just, in terms of our homeschool transport budget, we're just not in a position where we can do that. You know, yeah. Vaguely speaking, we're trying to get the costs in the homeschool transport budget down, not up.
Yeah, just got one more question. It's a more factual one. How do you define public transport for people living near to public transport, and do you include the 244, the special school buses that Horseman put on?
Yes, that would be included in the categorisation of that. Public transport, I mean, I hope it's, I mean, maybe the question was specifically about the Horseman buses, but yes, we would include those within those. Any form of kind of bus or train, or, you know, the kind of the general kind of understanding of public transport. And basically, if you can go on Google Maps and it gives you kind of a public transport link, then that will classify obviously as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that would be I would hope there's a broad shared understanding of what public transport is. It's a service that runs irrespective of whether you commission it as an individual, right?
Well, just thinking about where I live, which is on the Basingstoke Road, on the 600 route. But if I was going to Forest School, which is very near Winnersh station, it would take me an incredibly long time, because I'd have to go via Reading. So that, I mean, it's that sort of
so we do have that defined within the policy in terms of the time. I believe that is actually specified within the policy. So let me just kind of scan to that section. So the definition of access to public transport is children who do not have access to direct public transport service. So this is something we debated internally. Now, so this isn't like, oh, if you can get like a bus to there, and then then that links to a train that takes you there, and then you get another bus that goes down there. Obviously, everyone has theoretically access to a public transport link, but basically it'd be a direct. So you'd be using one mode of transport in one direct, you know, drops you off within 0.5 miles of the school, one service that is within 1 mile of your home residence walking distance. So hopefully that's kind of pretty clear in that respect. That's what we'd say is deemed as having access to public transport. If you live within a 1 mile walk of a direct service that drops you off within half a mile of the school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to make a couple of points, because although we focus very much on the criteria for obvious reasons, there are other things in the policy which are things like what you have to pay if you cancel your seat and things like that. I just want to check that people have a chance to discuss those things as well as the criteria, if there's anybody who's unhappy about any of the other proposals in it. And noting, the one thing I would say is probably more prominently needs to say, perhaps in bold, that if another eligible child comes along, it may be necessary to withdraw the seat. I think that perhaps needs a little bit more prominence. That's the only thing that I would say about it. The wording doesn't need to change, it just needs to be in bold somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Certainly.
Thank you. I just had a couple of hopefully very quick ones. I think sort of related to the access to public transport one. I think it's very clear about the sort of mile walk and 0.5 miles of the destination. I think you sort of mentioned, is there any scope to add a sort of, I don't want to say time limit into it, but I'm just thinking in some of the remote ones that there might be, say, that bus possible, but it might be a very long service. Is there, for saying how long that direct route might take, is there any sort of limit factored into there?
I mean, there isn't in the policy at the moment. I mean, I would assume that in reality that all of these would, if there was a direct route fundamentally, and I'm happy to be proven wrong if I'm indeed wrong. If there is a direct route, that they would all kind of meet the guidelines for home school transport, which is 75 minutes. So if you want a direct route from kind of that area of the borough, I would expect you should be able to get to your school within 75 minutes if indeed you did have a direct route.
Okay, and thank you. And my very final one was, I mean, I know this has been brought up by lots of parents and things, and just wondering what we're going to do to communicate this as kind of clearly and as widely to parents, because I think in my experience, even with the previous system, whilst lots of parents actually realised whatever the system was in place and might have been fair, I think some of it was they didn't always realise what the system was, and I think sometimes it's the same with school admissions and things like that. And I think probably what a lot of the parents want is that just to know where they stand with it. So I was wondering what things we've got in place to make sure it's shared as widely as possible so that parents aren't sort of left in confusion.
Sure. So we'll advertise it certainly as we advertise the survey. I mean, and that should hopefully kind of get out to kind of quite a wide audience. And in addition to which, I mean, that involves kind of publicising it via Shinfield Parish Council as well. Indeed, that like we'll be when we're publishing it on our website, and when we get round to the point of kind of inviting kind of applications, like all kind of relevant pupils will be notified of that anyway, and pointed. So all relevant families will be notified of that possibility in any case, who could theoretically be interested, and then they'll be pointed to the policy well in advance of the application process itself. But hopefully, you know, with the new application process, this takes some of the stress and strain out of it in any case, so they're not, again, kind of waiting by the computers to apply, and can kind of apply at their leisure and read the policy at their leisure. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this? So I think the recommendation is to approve this. So I think I'm happy to approve. Are we all? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So yeah. Do we can have a vote on it if we want to. All in favour of approving this? Yeah, that's fine. Great. Thank you very so much for your work on that. I think it's a really positive step to actually making it a bit clearer and hopefully fairer as well for everyone using that. So thank you. So we will move on to the next item, which is also the school place planning update.
Me again,
unfortunately. Oh, that's you again,
yeah. Yeah. So in relation to this, I believe we're kind of in an annual cycle of providing this committee with an update in relation to school place planning. There's kind of updates in relation, first of all, to to what has happened since the last update we provided to the committee. So since then, it's been some substantial developments. So whereas previously we were discussing the development of the Working Borough School Play strategy, that has now been approved by executive and published online. So we have an official adopted policy and strategy in that respect. And in addition to which, to kind of develop the corollary of that for specialist provision, we developed the SEND sufficiency statement, and that is due to be considered by the executive in May 2025. So hopefully when that is kind of adopted by the council, we will then have kind of two formal policies that sort of collectively encapsulate the full spectrum of school place planning sufficiency in that respect. I guess the other key development, which is just going to start as of next week, is that we've established a new Working Borough school place planning stakeholder group. Now, the essence of that really is to kind of provide strategic advice and input into the school organisation process, being mindful that we have kind of a number of big decisions to make probably over the course of the next year. And some members indeed of this committee are going to be representatives on that group and will already be aware of that. But the first meeting of that group is on the 27th of March next week. And the kind of initial focus of that group at that meeting will be, the core focus will be around the stuff that we're doing in primary, which we'll be touching on in this report. But just know that group involves kind of a really broad spectrum of representation. So includes representation from councillors, from officers, and a broad range of admissions authorities divided between head teachers, governors, and multi-academy trust CEOs as well as the two dioceses. So the report itself is divided into 5 key sections. 4 of those relate to mainstream, which is kind of broken down by age range. So we've got early years, primary, secondary, and post-16. Now, in terms of early years, there's not an awful lot to say, but that's kind of because it's a good news story. So the early years team have been kind of working extremely well in terms of delivering sufficiency for the borough, and I believe that we are classed as a childcare oasis. We are classified as a childcare oasis in terms of the fact that we have such a good sufficiency of places relative to other local authorities in the country. We're classed as doing exceptionally good work in that respect. So there really are no concerns in terms of place sufficiency in terms of early years, which is really good news. Moving on to the primary sector. It's almost the opposite problem of an insufficiency of places. We have too much of a surplus of places, and I think this is an issue that we've discussed at this committee before. Since we last kind of did an update, we have been through a round of PAN reductions effectively. So we worked in partnership with other schools and with other admissions authorities in terms of looking at kind of how we can reduce PANs across Wokingham and across our school primary sector. And you'll see in the table in the primary section that effectively at the moment we're kind of bobbling around just in excess of 16% in terms of our surplus capacity. But you'll notice in 26-27 that surplus capacity reduces quite substantially, and that's testament to the fact that we've done some really good work collectively across the education system to agree PAN reductions. So we've agreed PAN reductions that total 7 forms of entry in total, which is quite substantial. And brings us kind of a lot closer to where we want to be really in terms of the golden kind of surplus that is kind of often kind of treated as such within our area of planning. We generally have about 5% surplus to allow for flexibility for in-year admissions, parental preference, etc. So that would bring us a large way towards that. However, we're then faced with the issue that the birth rates just drop again to get us to our kind of our trough of demand, what we expect to be the trough of demand. So you'll see in 27, 28, it brings us back to basically where we are now. So we need to kind of go through another kind of round of PAN reductions really to kind of work towards moving us towards a more sustainable system. The issue, sorry, I have picked up when I was kind of reading through this report that there is a slight error in the report. which I'll apologise. In the final paragraph, it says that we need to reduce places by a further 6 forms of entry. Now, I did update the table, but I didn't kind of pick that up in the text. So what happened was, when this is originally written, we had 12 schools that were going to reduce their PAN. Subsequently got reduced to 10. So actually that 6 FE is actually increased to 7.5 FE. So basically, bearing in mind that we have reduced the system by 7 forms of entry, and we need to reduce the system by a further 7.5 forms of entry to get to a sustainable position, we can say that we're approximately halfway there. But there's a lot of work to do, and indeed, this will be what we'll be really focused on at the stakeholder group, as mentioned previously. And moving on to secondary, I think it's fair to say that at the moment there is a broad sufficiency of places. You can see there from the table that there's some very small deficits projected in years 10 and 11, but not to the extent that we would expect that couldn't be managed through kind of a very straightforward discussion with schools. You know, some taking an extra couple of kids in a go group isn't going to be something that is going to require formal expansion or anything like that. So broadly speaking, you'll see there that we have kind of a sufficiency of places. We have obviously that's concentrated in a few schools, which can create some issues in terms of parental preference, as was noted in the previous discussion. However, you know, in terms of executing our statutory duty, we're pretty much there, and we don't think we need to execute any further expansions, especially being mindful of the fact that what is currently being experienced in the primary sector will at some point be experienced in the secondary sector as well. So you can see in terms of the surplus places table there, that what we're looking at is really kind of getting into double-digit surplus in year 7 by about September 2028. And that's probably the point at which we need to be kind of seriously talking about kind of looking at PAN reductions in the secondary sector. So it'd be kind of remiss of us, I guess, to be adding too much surplus capacity now if we're just going to have to then reduce it later and kind of face the same issues later. So we're kind of keeping a watching brief on that. Obviously, we don't want to kind of make any formal commitments prior to kind of learning that our forecasting is kind of pretty much on point. But basically, if we're looking at making changes for 28, 29, then we probably need to be having kind of those discussions, initial discussions, kind of this time in the middle of, probably in the middle of next year, in order to kind of sort of plan appropriately for that. Moving on to post 16 again. So post 16, the picture is somewhat complicated by the fact that we only really have direct influence over a portion of the post 16 landscape. So in terms of our school 6 forms, you'll see within that initial table that's kind of the focus of that. Now, in terms of the plans that we have within the borough to expand capacity, such as the currently ongoing project to create the new 6th form at Bowhunt School, we believe that our plans that we currently have in place will be sufficient to deliver the necessary capacity to meet demand within the borough. You'll note there within the table that we're looking at, again, a very small surplus in 28, 29 and 29, 30, but not, again, something that couldn't be easily resolved through negotiation with individual schools. And it certainly wouldn't require new 6th form capacity to the extent of what we're doing at Bowhunt School, for example. Now, obviously, I'll kind of probably be remiss of me not to mention Embrook in this context as well, because obviously there is a project that we need to deliver there to ensure that they have sufficiency of provision in that respect as well. So there's an ongoing considerations around that as well. Now, the key issue here in terms of our post-16 planning is that we have a relatively large contingent of pupils who are educated outside of the borough at colleges and do kind of a more kind of practice-based curriculum. Now, that's not something that we have direct influence over, and indeed we're forecasting to see approximately a 10% increase in demand from both working borough residents for that provision that is currently located out of the borough. Now, it's obviously hard for us to negotiate expansions of provision that is literally physically located outside of the borough. We do also need to be mindful of the fact that if we are experiencing a 10% increase in demand for that, our neighbouring local authorities are probably going to be experiencing similar increases. which may result in kind of pushing working residents out of that. So what may on paper be a 10% increase in terms of a met demand may actually result in something that's more substantial than that. Now, those are the kind of conversations that we're going to have to factor into our wider kind of conversation around the skills and employment strategy. Certainly, we're feeding into that in terms of our raw numbers, and that will hopefully kind of inform a wider discussion in terms of what we need to do to kind of sort of resulting from what we want to achieve in terms of our skills and employment strategy, but what we need to subsequently deliver in terms of any kind of additional capacity or indeed any new forms of provision entirely that we might want to look at. But it's very early days in that respect, and I don't want to kind of go too far down that path until that strategy has been formulated, at least in draft format. But certainly those considerations will be feeding into that. Moving on to specialist provision, something we talked a lot about at this committee, but just to note, as we did at the start, that we are currently we're currently in the process of we have a final draft of the SEND sufficiency statement, which has within it a list of recommendations which will be kind of taken to executive for consideration. But broadly speaking, we'll be looking at kind of I think it's fair to say quite substantial increases in specialist capacity within the borough. Those recommendations have been consulted on and been informed by engagement with there's been kind of organised by SEND Voices, so thanks to them for that. And certainly in the feedback that we've received from SEND Voices, there's a very clear linkage between those engagement sessions and what parents said that they wanted to see more of in the borough and what we're recommending to do in terms of increasing capacity within the borough. So hopefully that all becomes clear when that policy goes to the executive as well. In terms of future development, there's a timeline there, just saying out kind of where we are in the process. So as I say, we've made the decisions in terms of the primary for 26-27. We're having the initial stakeholder group this month, which will result in kind of formulating some kind of initial proposals for primary, which will lead to further stakeholder engagement and outline proposals of it in the summer, and then formulating concrete proposals to go into the autumn for targeted stakeholder engagement, leading into an emissions decision this time next year. I've talked a long time on that one, and my mouth is very dry, so I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you very much. Charles, do you want to ask something?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, these graphs show numeric values for capacity across the whole borough, but they don't obviously consider where people are based. For example, in my ward in Finch Hampstead, if there's spare capacity in the Pigot, that's irrelevant because people aren't going to travel there. They're going to prefer to go out of borough to the south. So one thing I would be interested in these, especially when these numbers are tight, is what this means geographically, because people don't live in a way that they're going to travel an hour for school.
So is this in relation to the secondary in particular?
To be quite honest, it's relevant to any of these issues. I mean, my ward, historically, you're talking about sixth form colleges. People have always chosen, because I'm from Finch Hampstead, people have always chosen to go to Farnborough College for sixth form because you can reach it in 10 minutes on the train from Crowthorne. Now, there can be an offer 20 minutes up the road, but Farnborough's always going to be more attractive because it's nearer. And I realise these things are very complex. You're modelling lots of different factors and how they fit together. But especially in years where it's very tight on capacity, and I understand the logic of everything you've said, and I'm not disagreeing with any of it, you know, it's how this all fits together geographically that's missing from this piece. And it may not be possible to do it, but I just welcome your thoughts on that.
So in terms of primary, let's start with primary. So we absolutely do forecast. We have 7 primary planning areas within the borough that kind of deal with kind of geographical clusters. And so we do absolutely plan in terms of geographical locations for primary, because people generally want to go to their local primary school as a whole, whereas there is more at secondary level that there's increased mobility, and parental preference plays a more kind of is more kind of skewed to different kind of things than necessarily what is my nearest school. So planning on primary level is very much geographically geographic specific. So, for example, we know that there are 6 areas in the borough where we have kind of a big surplus of places, and then we have one area, the southwest, where actually there's actually quite a pressure on places. So we absolutely are factoring that geographical thinking in primary level. At a secondary level, we generally plan in terms of 2 areas, so it's the north and south of the borough. Again, because we anticipate kind of greater mobility in that respect, so there is some geographical thinking around that, and that is taken into account. But again, like they're bigger areas because generally parental preference operates over a wider geographical area at secondary. At post 16, I'll be kind of like hands up on this. Like, this is the first time we're doing this kind of really seriously. Before in the previous iterations, it's been really high level, and but we've worked in the new kind of forecasting methodology into this. We're looking specifically at kind of different types of demands. So whereas previously it was just kind of sixth form number across the borough, now we're looking at kind of like, theory based versus practice based. We're looking at kind of demand for out of borough versus demand in borough. So we are getting some additional nuance there. As to whether we'll kind of look at something, I'll say like it is still kind of for post 16, it is just looked at as one block, but it does look at demand, like I say, in and out of borough. So it does kind of on the basis of projections of our projection methodology, it does look at kind of which communities are likely to be more likely to apply out of borough than others. So that stuff that you said about Finchampstead should work its way into that in some sense in terms of the total demand for our borough. The complexity there is how we ultimately end up kind of influencing what a college that is not within our purview offers in terms of pure capacity. It's something that I think we need to kind of at least have that discussion based upon the numbers that we currently have, our forecast that we currently have, and feed that into that conversation that we're having in relation to the employment and skills strategy. And then kind of, and then whatever comes out of that then might lead to, well, what are we looking to provide within borough, and is that going to lead to any gaps that there's still going to be an unmet demand for pupils who want to go out of borough? And if that is the case, then we probably need to start having engagement with those colleges. But it would be, I guess, a bit cart before horse to do that before we even mapped out what we're actually going to deliver within borough. So I guess what I'm saying is fully accept that this is still a work in progress. So the post 16 stuff is not like cards on the table is not as well developed as the other sections, but it is something we're working on. It's certainly more developed than it was this time last year, and it will be more developed this time next year.
Thank you. Just briefly come back on that, then I'll let other people have their say. Agree completely with what you say about primary schools. My experience has always been people want to go to the neighbouring one. I think the secondary, I recognise also that this is better than I've seen the time I've been on this council, basically, and recognise the work that's gone into it. I think there does need to be, especially with not just the post-16, the secondary school thing, and I'd welcome your thoughts, Chair, about this possibly coming to this committee in the future, some kind of analysis of geographically where these places are. Because as I said, basically, I date from the days before Bohunt School was in Finchampstead. We were always told by people here, none of whom are still here in children's services, I should say, there was plenty of capacity for sixth forms in Wokingham, and there was no need for another sixth form in the south. Yeah, but all our local children were going to Farnborough College because they didn't want to go to Wokingham because Farnborough College was nearer. And I think these issues occur across the borough. I remember having a conversation with Graham Howe, who was then the member for Wargrave, of exactly the same situation with Henley College in his area. So I commend you for what you're doing. I think it's exactly the right way, basically. But I think, Chair, if you'd agree, we should be perhaps looking at that on a secondary level at some point next year.
Yeah, my question is sort of similar to Charles. These numbers, do these numbers account for people who are not Wokingham residents that attend school? In Wokingham, for example, I live close to Maiden Early, and I know a lot of people that are from Reading come to Maiden Early. Do these numbers capture?
Yes, yeah. So our forecasts sort of integrate kind of movements between different local authorities. So both pupils within Wokingham who are likely to, because basically what we do is we use, so if you want to get into the nitty-gritty, is that we use kind of 3 historic trends to project forwards. So we'll look at kind of how many within any kind of lower super area, how many children within that area over the past 3 years have typically accessed X, Y, Z school within Wokingham, but have also accessed any schools outside of Wokingham. And then we'll take the averages of those and we'll use those averages to map forwards. So if an historic trend shows that the pupils within Wokingham are accessing schools outside of Wokingham, that gets included in our forecasts. Similarly, if there are pupils who live outside of Wokingham who have historically accessed schools within Wokingham, that also gets mapped into the forecast.
Thank you. I just had one general one. I'm aware that this might be above your remit, and it might be more for Prue or Emma, but I think particularly it was the post-16 stuff which you were talking about. I mean, it's good that there's been more focus on this, but I'm just thinking in terms of a longer view with it. What struck me about was the types of provision we have, and my thoughts were, okay, I'm a year 11 student who's got their GCSEs, and I've got a 3 in English and maths. Is there anywhere in the borough that I can go for post-16 education with a 3 in English and maths?
I think I'm hoping Emma.
Sorry, this is probably more for Prue.
Emma will, but what we want to do is provide post-16 education for everybody who needs it of whatever type that's required. And at the moment, we have a very academic offering. There's nothing wrong with an academic offering for a lot of students, but it is very academic, and we don't offer anything really in the borough that isn't a school sixth form. And many children, or young people I should call them, they don't always want to go to a sixth form, even if they want an academic offering, because they don't want to stay in school. They want to be transitioning to be an adult, and that's another reason why they choose to go to college. So we need to consider all of those things to widen our offer for everybody, and that includes the post-16 SEND students, because there isn't really, we've got a couple of places, special schools that take them all the way through to 19, but we don't have anything else, and so we are busing a lot of post-16. We're not busing them now, we're giving them a payment in some cases, but they have to travel a long way to get anything, and that's really not satisfactory. So this is the first time as a council we've comprehensively tried to tackle this, and we do need to think beyond just the traditional sixth form model. I hope that's all right with officers. I think it is, but I think.
Yeah, and I think just to the earlier point, that's exactly the kind of thing that will be factoring into our thinking when we're just, it's not me that's kind of that's steering the development of the employment and skills strategy, but that is something that I'm sure will be factored into that, in terms of, first of all, mapping out kind of what our vision is for Wokingham in that respect, and then kind of what that means in terms of provision, and whether indeed we do need to develop that kind of provision within borough. Because like I say, at the moment we have kind of literally no direct influence over any provision that would meet the needs of learners like that. So yeah, developing something within borough is certainly something that would need to be considered. And that, again, like, certainly kind of not something that I can commit to or even have a kind of influence over in terms of developing that. Obviously, we're going to present our numbers there and sort of feed into that conversation. But I'm sure that will be factored into the thinking that kind of happens at that group.
If I can just have one sort of last word before Emma comes in, it does very much go in line with our community vision that we've approved, which is that we want Wokingham to be somewhere where everybody feels that they belong and they're included. I can't remember the exact words of the vision, sorry about that, but it is part of that thinking.
Yeah.
And just to echo, I think what Prue and Ollie have said, but that importance of us being really clear in our evidence, and would bring that back to those findings to air in this committee for discussion and consideration. But it is a positive development that analysis is now happening, that hasn't historically to date happened, because I think it is about making sure that we understand that all children and young people are able to access provision that meets their needs and gives them the
qualifications and skills to be able to you know, kind of enter into adult life and contribute positively to their communities. So, but yeah, really positive that that analysis is now happening.
Yeah, thank you. Ming, did you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, just really quickly to add that this is a very good question, Chair, because Austin actually carried out thematic review 1 year ago, that which is quite a few regions post-16 provision, including college. What they have found is that the lack of level 1 and level 2 lower levels courses for particularly for young people who, like you just described, may need to have that kind of ladder, that springboard. So that's something. It is a national challenge. We, as Emma and Prue just said, we locally want to look into that as well. Whether there's a gap in even we have college nearby authority in our sixth form. Is very, very traditional provisions. So that's the level 1, level 2 courses. Probably we need to look into more. So our most vulnerable children, young people, to have access to the right courses and right qualifications for them to move further in the education.
May I say one thing? Well, it's become even more important in the last 2 days with the announcements on benefits for young people, that you won't be able to claim anything if you're under 22. So the fewer NEETs we have, the better for them, because that means having a wide provision of education and training opportunities, because otherwise they won't be able to access them, and that's really important for their general well-being as well as their education, as it were.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there any other questions? So, thank you for all of those points. I wonder if we could just, on a couple of recommendations on these items. So I think I'd like to take Charles's one up on that. I know this is sort of a report which it's around about annually, isn't it? But whether we could include, and I think it has been on there in previous ones, but a sort of a geographical element on it next time, so we can see that spread. It sounds like that analysis is happening, but if that could be included. And also, I think is it the skills and employment strategy. I wonder whether that could come, or at least the education part of it, if it's split in that way, that we could maybe see that at some point, because I think particularly with the post-16 element, I think it would be nice for that to feed into the work here, if we can come to that maybe on the forward programme. But thank you very much for those presentations. So we'll move on now to the next 2 agenda items. You get to say it twice. Well, the executive member updates.
So I've covered some of it. One thing that didn't come out in our discussion of schools was the offers of secondary school places that were made on the 3rd of March. It's National Offer Day. So we were able to offer 98% of parents at least one of their choices of school, and 82% got their first choice, and that's a real improvement. That's the 3rd year in a row I think we've improved things. That's a really good achievement, and Ming told me that the office had never been so quiet on National Offer Day, as they had so few parents ringing up to express their concerns about not getting a place. So it's very sad for the very few people who didn't get the place they want, but we did fantastically well, and most people have got what they wanted. So that is excellent news. The other thing I wanted to talk about was yesterday. I went with Emma, in fact with Hayley. I think is she Hayley on the call? I can't see from here. To see Seaford Court, which is our new care leaver accommodation. It's absolutely fantastic. It's got 10 rooms, and we expect at least 9 of them to be occupied by next Tuesday. So that's pretty good. It's been an excellent project. It's collaboration between property, children's services and housing. and everybody involved should be congratulated for it. It's really good. This is a building that was previously used for accommodation for homeless young people, but it shut a few years ago, and the building has just sat there empty ever since, which is a great shame. It was owned by a charity called Caritas, and they've sold it to us for a very modest amount. I don't think I'm allowed to say how much because this is part one. But we've taken it on, we've refurbished it completely, and it's really great to see it back into use, and it looks fabulous. And Caritas are going to continue being involved with supporting young people who need accommodation in the borough, and they're probably going to do that through Woking United Charities, who work with us on quite a lot of things. All the young people who've been made offers of accommodation are 18 to 25. They're all care leavers, and quite a few of them are currently having to live outside the borough. And the plan is they will stay in that accommodation for probably about a year while they find their feet and then get ready to move on to the next stage in their lives. And really, even better than providing them with excellent quality education locally, provided that we can keep the accommodation full or nearly full, which I'm pretty sure we can do, it will save us something in the order of £10,000 a week in accommodation costs, in other accommodation costs. So that is a huge saving and a much better quality of accommodation, which is so it's a win-win for everybody. And I think from what I heard yesterday, they're all really excited at coming, and I really hope they enjoy it, because it's really a fantastic project. It's got solar panels, it's got ground source heat pumps, it's got a misting system. I know a lot of people don't want us to build things which haven't got sprinklers, but it's got a misting system which is better than sprinklers. So it's really lovely, and they've even got their food waste bins and their recycling bags ready. So it's going to be an excellent provision.
Thank you very much. There's no any questions for Prue on any of those items. Thank you very much. So we will move on to the next item, 62, which is the social care update. So Adam.
Thank you, Chair. So the report, or the summary of the report, this meeting is divided into two main sections, and the first bit looks at the focus visit. So we've brought this meeting before, I think, just as we were about preparing for the visit, and then after the visit when the report wasn't published, and now the report has been published, and there was a link shared in relation to the focus visit that Ofsted did in December last year. And then the summary that I provided shares a summary of the findings, or the key headlines really, and then the priorities that we've taken from those in terms of areas we're focusing on for development and improvement. And the second part of the report focuses on the Local Government Association, who we invited last year to come this year to do a diagnostic to help us prepare for a potential inspection. So there was a sequencing bit that Ofsted didn't quite conform to in terms of when they landed with us. And that was a very useful diagnostic. It's not an inspection, it was very much on a critical friend peer challenge. There was a counsellor, a director of children's services, and their members from the LGA, and they met with a significant number of officers and counsellors and children and social workers from across the council, and they provided us with some valuable feedback that we will then use to inform and continue to develop our corporate parenting offer. So that's really the summary, and that outcome of that will be fed back into the corporate parenting board in terms of looking at that whole part and role and function of how we work with our children in care and care leavers. So I don't know if there's any questions in relation to...
So, yeah, it's more, I mean, I know there's some overlap with the corporate parenting board on this committee as well, but I know the letter which was shared at that. I was wondering whether that can be, if that will be circulated to all councillors, would that be possible to?
So, thank you, Chair. There is a piece of work where we are going to present to each of the groups and are in the process of arranging that meeting. And then that letter is feeding into the update of our local offer for our care leavers, and that will go to executive and then to full council, so that it will be shared with all members. But we are also working with, I'm working with our corporate leadership team in terms of sharing that with all council employees, because we are all parents to the children that we care for, and have responsibilities. There's also been an announcement within the last week in terms of there will be a duty placed upon all public bodies in the new Children's Schools and Wellbeing Bill in relation to corporate parenting duties. So, which again is a really positive step in recognition that all agencies are contributing, particularly to supporting the children that we care for and our care leavers as they grow and develop.
I don't know why, but the dashboard that I always go to is the children in care with more than one allocated social worker in a year. Because if those children...
Come to the...
Oh, sorry, have I jumped ahead on the dashboard?
We'll come to the dashboard bits after.
I'll hold fire.
Is that right? Sorry.
I also had a question, but I can't find the dashboard now, and I might be wrong on this one as well. The NEAT role that's being... Am I a dashboard ahead on that as well? I can't find the dashboard.
Yeah, well, I think we'll come to the dashboards because I think we're just on the first, but we'll come to the dashboard bits.
We can talk about that role in the scope of the focus visit, though, because that was one of the findings, was around the support, particularly for our older care leavers. So whilst the finding was that our virtual school was very positively supporting 16 and 17-year-olds, they highlighted that there was a gap in relation to the support for 18 to 25-year-olds, and that we've got some further work to do in terms of that. So from the evidence in terms of that feedback and focus visit, that has provided the evidence for agreement for a specific role that will be supporting 18 to 25-year-old care leavers.
When are we expecting to have them in post?
Very shortly. I don't know whether Ming, are you able to update in relation to that?
Sorry,
is Ming on the...
I'm still here. So I heard that you want to make sure I answer exam question right. You want to talk about developing that particular role in virtual school internal need coordination.
So the agreement for budget was given because that was wrapped into the agreement around the budget for full council that came at the end of February. Yeah. So that recruitment is currently underway, from what I understand, and I think there may be somebody who is currently in another role who is applying. So that's my understanding, is that role is potentially being filled quite quickly.
Excellent.
Emma is right on that. I don't want to go into individual case. I think we may have a current put our qualified people applying for the job. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Are there any more on that part? Mine was just going to be very brief again. With the feedback from the LGA exercise and stuff, again, is that something which could be sort of circulated amongst the committee and things after? I think that'd be. Well, how will it be? Will it just be a sort of letter of? Will it be feedback as such, or will it?
So they feedback with an overview report which we've received. That will go to, because it's making some recommendations in particular to the Corporate Parenting Board and how that functions. So we need to take that to fair to say we've already started some work on kind of those recommendations, particularly how the board needs to change, which we will take to Corporate Parenting Board, and then I think in the next update that comes to the next social care update, we can inform this committee in terms of those proposed changes and the recommendations.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
There's one bit in the focused visit that I don't think is really come out in the report, but that's support for our care leavers who are parents themselves. And we've already started doing quite a lot of work on that because we're now going to be corporate grandparents as well. So yes, except they don't like the use of the word corporate, so we're going to have to think of another word. I don't know how we're going to get that. But that was very interesting. So there's stuff going on that as well, and it feeds into this kind of holistic view of people that there is a correlation between people who've had who've been in care themselves, or care experience, and people, and then an unfortunate tendency that they're more likely than the average to have their own children taken into care, and we would want to prevent that as much as we could by supporting them as much as we can. Because if they haven't had very good experiences of parenting themselves, it makes it more difficult for them. But we're on that as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know that was one of the things that Corporate Parenting Board, it sort of struck me as something which I hadn't thought about before, but it's
and we'll link quite neatly to one of the next agenda items about our helping early strategy, of which you know, kind of support for care leavers who are going to become parents is really key.
Yeah, I mean, one of my brief thoughts, and it might be more appropriate for the Corporate Parenting Board, but is with as that corporate grandparenting, is there any sort of structure in their place? Because I know there's things like we sort of offer, you know, gifts and things like that for children in care. Is that factored into sort of the grandchildren in care and things like that?
So in the document it makes reference to the local offer, and the local offer is what we offer to support our care leavers. And what we're looking is developing a specific part of that offer that reflects those care leavers, both mothers and fathers, to become parents, in terms of how we support them during pregnancy, through to their engagement with hospital and health professionals, and then also in terms of either giving them how we sort of provide, sort of maybe take food round at the time of the birth, and sort of reflecting as a family would do and wrap around supporting parents or young parents as they move into that new role. So it's going to be quite sort of detailed around aspects of that. That's the plan.
Thank you. So should we? Did you want to sort of say anything on the second part? Was there any summary that you wanted to make on the dashboard items or anything?
I would say normally we go through it, and then there's, I suppose, questions that have come to light is probably easier.
Yeah. So we'll go through the dashboards. So we'll just see if there's any questions on each of these. So these are the bits starting from page 67. So are there any questions on dashboard 1? Have you found which dashboard?
I've got the right dashboard.
Okay.
I've got my notes. I got my notes out of sync, was why I came in early.
Dashboard 2. Dashboard 3. Number 4.
Oh, there might be.
Is it you?
Deja vu. Cheers. Yeah, I'm always struck by the children with more than one allocated social worker in 12 months, because stability for those children is so important, isn't it? So it's great to see that it's dropped to 51%, which I'm guessing is a knock-on effect of the recruitment and having a more stable team. How confident are we that we can get it lower, like to that 37 or below that it was a couple of years ago?
So 37 was the 22-23
yeah.
average, wasn't it, for the whole year?
Yeah.
And I would say, so the team is half one worker is permanently staffed now. We're currently recruiting 2 additional workers. But you'll expect to see some percentage of change as children move from different teams as they move through, in terms of once their plan to remain in care becomes permanent, and therefore they can move to the half the team. But I would say that having a stable team is key to driving that down. I think before previous years we've seen it climb. when we had a lot of people leave that team, and there was a lot of transition going on as people moved on. So stability of workforce is key in terms of reducing that number.
So you think we can head towards?
Yeah, I think the conditions are right to try and that figure lower.
Great.
Thank you. So any on dashboard 5? I've just got a brief one on this one. I think particularly in terms of the needs and the education and stuff, links a little bit to actually the previous things about post 16. It's just a thought really, given that as we've sort of discussed, the post 16 options are quite narrow. Do we feel that as a result disproportionately affects our children in care, and I was thinking it from the perspective that as we've designated that as a protected characteristic, I mean, does that mean that we need to be even more careful about what our offer is post 16 and actually how we make sure that offer is as broad as possible for those children that we care for?
So this data looks at care leavers, which would be the post-18 cohort. And I would say that the cohort of children is quite significant, adults, care leavers is quite significant. And a number of those won't live in Wokingham, they'll be living across Wokingham, as we heard, in terms of Seaford Court and that plan in terms of bring more back to Wokingham. Then the role we mentioned earlier in terms of not just working with those needs, but how we can stimulate activity or opportunities in terms of that's apprenticeships or other opportunities that aren't all about higher education, further education, or in terms of more vocational courses or training. And that's it. And what that sort of description is someone who would hold that ring of that function that sits in different parts across the council, across the borough, and different parts to drive and reduce that figure.
Okay, thank you. And any questions on item number 6? That's all of them. So thank you very much for that. So next item that we will look at is the Helping Early strategy.
Sorry, apologies, Chair. We have Jacqueline Dance, who is our head of service. I'll let her, she's got quite a lengthy title, so I'll let her introduce herself. But this work is very much focused on the work that we've been doing to address how we get a more coherent preventative offer. Supporting children and families before needs escalate and is linked to both addressing the needs of children who might become eventually open to our children's social care service, and also those children who might present with additional needs in terms of our educational offer. This is I'll let Jacqueline talk to the strategy and the development of that, but you have a copy of the draft strategy that has been circulated.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for that introduction. Good evening. So in terms of the Helping Early strategy, as Emma's mentioned, you would have had a copy of that, and I think it's intended to read in a way that's really accessible and is set out really, really clearly. So hopefully it's kind of well understood. In terms of the strategy itself, it really is seeking to ensure that we enable families to receive the right help at the right time when they need it, to stop those needs escalating and problems getting harder to solve, really. I think in terms of the strategy itself, what we're seeking to do is try and nurture and grow and cultivate what we have already, but better connect it as a system to make sure that children and families have those opportunities to thrive. In terms of who it seeks to include, we're looking at pre-birth to children when they turn 18, but also up to 25 for children with special educational needs and a disability, and those that are care experience, recognising those additional vulnerabilities that those have. In terms of the strategy, we are also, I guess, in terms of terminology around early help, we are trying to move away from early help being seen as one team, one service. It's actually around a collective need for us all to be able to support children and families, and we're trying to reframe that to make sure that we're looking at a mutually connected and more supported system that is more responsive and is not looking at one particular individual and one particular team to meet those needs that are arising in the community. You'll see from the strategy itself, there are three main areas to look to reshape, renew, refocus, and to improve. So the first is access, so that's the availability and the offer of support, the time in which it takes for help to be accessed itself, and overcoming some barriers that some families find really hard to be able to get that help. We've got the experience itself that we're looking to improve. So that's making sure that that help is helpful, it's effective, and it's impactful. And the third main area of focus is ensuring that the system itself connects better and works exclusively to actually be there to support children and families. So it's much better connected and mutually supportive. In terms of the key areas of focus, so what we want to see real changes, so those tangible things, other than that wider system change, these look particularly to be a more joined up and broader parenting offer. Families knowing where to go, so that includes an increased digital offer. So some families absolutely want to be able to look online and look where they can find things and where they go, but some families want to talk to someone. They want to understand what's there and available. So a more conversational approach that we can embed into a system, I think, is really important. Place-based support is really key as part of this strategy. That's really about making sure that help is available in the places where people live, that actually it's accessible in those areas, and that might look at to be community hubs or the development of the children's centres that we've already got across the borough. And then we are also looking at reinstatement of targeted outreach. So for some families, they absolutely want to go somewhere to get that help. For others, it might be harder. There's some stigmas often that are attached, or it's just there's a number of barriers to overcome to be able to ask for that help. So actually being able to be more present and engaged within those communities, I think is really, really key. In terms of the work that's been undertaken as part of the strategy, there's a huge amount of consultation and activity that has led to us to get to where we are right now. That has looked to be meetings with practitioners and service leads across the borough. We've had over 30 shared experiences of families that have been understood through 3 focus groups that have been facilitated. We've had a number of targeted early help audits. So for the targeted early help team, we've really done deep dives into the experience of families in receiving that help, which has really helped, I think, open our eyes in terms of what that experience has looked like and where we can strengthen those areas. And we've had 3 multi-agency workshops, which has included an opportunity to complete the early help system guide, where we've done a real kind of evaluation of what we have, what works really well, but what do we need to do slightly differently. I think one of the things that we really recognise for this to be a success is about that connectivity and alignment with the voluntary and community sector. So alongside the voluntary community sector steering group, where there's been engagement, there's also been engagement outside of that with First Days, with Cowshed, with Share, with Homes, but a huge number of those voluntary organisations that's really helped us look at what do families want and what do they need and where do they want to go to be able to get that. So that's been really, really helpful. And the helping early workshops also have been really well attended by the local authority, multi-agency partners, and as I said, the voluntary and community sector, which has given a real thirst, I think, for change and really demonstrated that there is a commitment to do this and to do this together. So that's been incredibly positive. I think the other thing just to add in terms of the strategy so far, so it's been out for consultation, we've sought feedback on that, and that's been really valuable to continue to shape it. Some of the things that we've heard in terms of the feedback is about the need to thread inequality a bit more throughout that document, which has happened, and you'll see the changes that have been made. We've also really evaluated what the governance structure looks like around this. Like, how do we know we're doing a good job? How do we know that we're doing what we say we need to be doing? We've also had feedback from the workshops, which has told us about the value base. what's underpinning all of this, and why are we doing this, and what are our common goals and common values that's underpinning that work. And I think a really crucial other bit that's kind of helped inform the strategy is really understanding from parents, they want more peer support. They want to find ways, and they want to know how can they work together to support one another, rather than maybe asking someone they don't know to do that. So I think they're probably some of the key elements. I can't think of anything else that's really key to draw on, but I appreciate that there might be some questions. So are there any questions?
Thank you. I had one, but you answered it all in your introduction, so that's great.
Thank
Does
you.
anyone have... yeah.
Thanks for that. So at the start it said you want to provide clarity and feel joined up, and I think it does, and it's really well presented through the document. But I was struck by, it's one thing to write a strategy, it's another thing to bring it to life, and there's an awful lot of work and things to be done. Like, how are you going to bring it to life and make it happen?
What a good question. I think so. We've got a really good basis through being able to hold the Helping Early workshops, which have been incredibly well attended. So we've had kind of up to 40 or 50 individuals from across the whole early help system. Has created a really good platform for us to build on and take forward. So we have that engagement, and I think that interest really helps pave the way for how we continue to build on this. This is also a partnership strategy. This is not about us kind of sitting here and presenting this in our own right. This captures the voices, the needs, the aspirations, I think, across the whole system, and there is that real energy to be able to take this forward. Obviously, we work now towards thinking about a delivery plan and what do we need to do and how do we need to do it to make this happen. We have already got some groups that are put together, which have got really good representation, I think, across the board, and some very good early ideas about where we take this forward. So I think we absolutely have the platform to do it, and we have the energy and we have the value base to want to be able to achieve this. And I know that, Emma, I don't know in terms of the governance arrangements around this kind of sitting with the Children and Young People's Partnership Board, which obviously is a partnership representation. We've then got that kind of governance element that will support the trajectory of the work also.
So it'd be interesting to agree some KPIs to come here, so we're part of the delivery as a group, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because we have to own it as much as your team have to own it.
Yes, and definitely. And I think, I mean, it would be helpful to have your feedback on the strategy. Certainly from all of you, we'll be having feedback from children and families and their experiences and things that are impacting upon them in terms of the difference that we need to be making as a local area, because this is an area-based strategy. But we can bring back the delivery plan to this scrutiny committee, and we can have some feedback in terms of actually what measures would we like to see, what would we like to see different for children and families, and then collectively thinking about how we measure that. One of the other areas, and I've been in conversation with our Director of Public Health today about linked to this strategy, but also broader transformation in relation to children's social care and SEND, is getting a very clear baseline about where we are and children's daily lived experiences in Wokingham, and kind of understanding that better through data. So looking at our a joint strategic needs analysis in relation to children, and developing that going forward. So that's a piece of work that again will help us measure where we were this year, where we'll be, in subsequent years in terms of difference. So all of this is very much linked. But so that's a good point, and happy to bring that back here.
Great, thank you very much for that. Yeah,
Yeah,
certainly presenting it so clearly as well. So that's great.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to the next item, which is the forward programme. So does anyone have any comments on things for the forward programme, or any things they'd like to propose that we put in there or move around at all? I just had one thing which I should have spotted before. I think we've got down for the 17th of June for the Youth Council but obviously we've had it this meeting, and whether that would make more sense to move that to one day, or was there a specific thing for that? Was that the survey response?
That was the youth needs analysis and all of that.
Because that's on a separate, on here, so is that the youth needs assessment, or is that the survey?
Yes.
So they probably don't need to be. So yeah, and maybe we have an update for the youth, if that's more of an annual thing. We push that a bit further back. Maybe would that make more sense for people? Yeah. So I think that was the and then it was only a small thing on the 17th of September. The helping early strategy was a different type of early.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that.
I did point that out when we met.
Can't help it.
So the people might get the wrong idea with what we're doing.
It is important to point out that this doesn't relate to a specific place in Woking. Which some of our head teachers have.
Oh really?
Pointed out. So yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on the forward programme? No. Okay. Great. So then we'll move on to the action tracker. Are there any comments? Well, I'll go through each individual thing, and if there's any comments on these. So obviously we're coming to the end of this municipal year, so I think we were just talking before, and all the completed ones will kind of remove and just hold on to any of the ones which are ongoing, but which are only a few. So I think in terms of the first one, the KPIs, I think that's all kind of happened now, really, in terms of, I think that's presented in a clearer way, so I think we can mark that's completed. I think the KPIs from the 20th of March were on the bottom of 125. I think the first one's been done. Which one was it? I don't know if I don't think the mediations at the tribunals was on this one, was it? I'm not sure. No, and whether that could be included. And I think we talked about including the annual reviews and the quality, if that could be something which could be added in. So I think that was maybe one that we can keep in there. And then the other ones, the KPI ones kind of link into that, I think, from the 6th of November. And I know for the dashboard, sorry, this is from the 6th, this is going into page 126. There's the ongoing benchmarking. I know for the more than one social worker in 12 months. Is that just sort of more research needed, I guess, to find national benchmarking for that one?
That is something that is going to be reported on at national level. It's one of there are new, as part of the reforms, there's a new nationally accessible database around the different KPIs from each local authority. Okay. So you can look at region, you can look at statistical neighbours, and we can include a link to that, because whoever you are, it's publicly available in relation to accessing that information. But the change in social worker is a new reporting. So the information will then be published and will go into that that data set, so it will be available to benchmark, but not currently. We haven't got those comparisons.
Do you know when those are coming out? Is that I'd need to get an update, but we can provide that in future reporting. That's cool. Thank you. Okay, so I think that's most of those there. Are there any other comments on the actions that anyone wanted to raise? Thank you. So, in which case, we'll move on to agenda item number 66, which is the exclusion of the public that under section 100A, part 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act.